a growing confusion inside a spiritual awakening is as to our true origins as the human race. Were we a genetically engineered species, or are we organic? So today I'm going to explain exactly what the human condition is. The human species, as we are today, has been modified or altered. So many people who learn this fact that our race has been tampered with so as to take certain things out and to put and install certain things in to our biology and to our DNA. We think that because there is this truth, this fact that we are tampered with, that then we get massively confused and think that because that is true and that we are in fact modified as a human species, that means that those who altered, tampered, and modified our biology is therefore our creator. And this is one of the biggest confusions within the spirit of this age. It's that we think that whoever modified us, whoever tampered with us, is our mommy and daddy, is our source origins. That could not be further from the truth. There is a very large difference between us as a human species being interfered with and being tampered with, versus that meaning that whoever came in and interfered with us in our evolution means that that is our source. And this is one of the biggest confusions that a person going through a spiritual awakening will need to be able to confront for themselves. It's this ability to understand that the human species is not some completely modified and engineered race that was created in order to be some sort of slave race or some sort of food farm for advanced civilizations. But instead, that does not mean that there's no truth within that. See, the groups infusing this into the New Age can hijack the storyline and twist it into humanity actually being a modified slave race. And guess how that will manipulate your understanding of the human condition? It will manipulate you into thinking exactly that humanity as we know it was only a primitive subspecies before we were altered to become a slave race for more advanced civilizations. Why this is such an important yet subtle difference is because this is the narrative that's paving the way for a false disclosure timeline. You cannot change the course of humanity's evolution. So what you will need to do instead is go along with it. You will need to make new control mechanisms for every age, because the control mechanisms of the prior age will already be naturally outgrown. So you always have to switch it up. This narrative that we are created to mine gold for advanced civilizations hijacks the entire paradigm that we see and organize our reality through. It hijacks our spiritual awakening. We will lose touch with the truth that Earth is a multidimensional matrix. Very similar to a school that has different versions of her curriculum manifest, depending on the frequency of the soul. Earth is a very special portal between the lower realms and the organic ascended worlds. Even though we have agreed upon collective themes, we are all here with very different intentions for our own personal spiritual development. So everyone will access different lessons and experience different versions of this multidimensional school. But our human evolution is a part of a much larger process. It is not done through hybridization. When a person starts to believe that evolution is done through only hybridization, that belief funnels the being into base consciousness, otherwise known as the most distorted, immature, and limited form of consciousness and form of understanding the metaphysical. We must understand this difference. Yeah, we have been modified with and tampered with for us to become ignorant and for us to become essentially a louche source for other beings. But that does not mean that that is all we are, and that we were created and we are an engineered race by those beings. Huge difference. And once you can master this level of clarity, you will now be able to start accessing within you source energy, source incarnate, because that is what the human species truly is. It's source. And once you go through a large enough revelation, you will be able to directly connect with that truth for yourself. And in fact, revelations, which is the age that we are in, is the apocalypse. What does that mean? Many of us know that apocalypse means an unveiling. That is literally the word in Greek of what it means. It is an unveiling. Apo, undoing. So because we are in an unveiling, we are living the age of revelations. And there's no giant revelation that is beyond the fact that what we will come to is the revealing, the unveiling, that we are source. That all being is source, not just us, the individual and the ego, but that all is source. And so when we understand this truth, we can then start seeing how it would actually aid and it would actually help opportunistic, parasitic beings for us to believe that they did create us and that we are an engineered weak race that was simply meant to just be a lower level consciousness, low enough level so that we don't resist and we are ignorant to our true origins of being a slave race, but also conscious enough to be able to do the worker bee, to do out the slave mining of whatever is needed for our creators. All of that deception of us being smart enough to work and to do automated tasks, but not smart enough to know who we truly are. That whole range of consciousness is one that has some truth to it. That's why we have certain things installed within our own biology. It's specifically to cut off our range of motion, to cut off our larger consciousness and awaken to who we are. But that does not mean that that is the whole truth of who we are, because we're not an engineered species. We're not an engineered slave race for a higher being race. Instead, whoever came in to pretend they were mommy and daddy thought that it would be advantageous, thought that it would be a good opportunity to come in and avail themselves as, yeah, we created you. Yeah, you guys, it would benefit them to believe that we really were this smaller race of human that was subhuman, that was not fully even in a human form, and that they interfered and altered it for us to become human. That is a large deception, because that sets us up for believing that whoever comes inside this place now in this age, whether it's some sort of fake disclosure, whether it's some sort of unveiling, will now be the new way that we're deceived into worshiping, the new savior thing to come along. When you get the awakening human collective to believe that whoever altered them is who created them, that whoever scrambled our epigenetics and encoded our DNA with various programs, including a worship gene, means that they are our cosmic parents and that humanity would not exist without them. Now, you successfully confuse those who are going through a spiritual awakening. The worship gene programs the human consciousness to never exceed a certain bandwidth of frequency. So it programs the body, mind, spirit to sacrifice itself to the false light. It programs us to fear the organic light. When we are within the range of activating our remembrance, it programs us to fragment our consciousness into cognitive dissonance, to keep us in a spiritual amnesia. Cognitive dissonance also just makes a person stay in an unresolved inner confusion. The worship gene also causes a person to perceive spiritual sovereignty as a form of spiritual narcissism. Spiritual narcissism is when a being believes that they are superior to other people and to other beings. But spiritual sovereignty is when a person becomes their own inner authority. Becoming your own inner authority is true order. Whereas believing you are superior to other people or to other beings is simply the narcissism of a confused ego. So if a person has evolved their frequency out of the bandwidth of being some sort of food source for religious thought forms to feed off of through worship, now we have to worry about some alien creator race coming in and being the new source for us to look up to, revere, and worship. All of this happens when a person still has their worship gene activated within their biology. And so there, once again, is truth to what is being said about there being tampering going on to our biology. Because a part of the tampering and the alterations that were done to our biology was to deactivate many of our strands of DNA so that we can't access them, but also to install a worship gene. Now, I talk about this inside my video, What is Worship? So you should definitely check that out. And this worship gene, which I can see in people's fields, but I didn't know there was an actual name to until I came upon a video saying that there was a worship gene. How this is experienced in the energetic field is as a person not actually being able to access any of their consciousness above a certain point, or else they start getting into a threshold of a lot of fear, as though what they're doing is wrong and what they're doing is actually really bad. And so they start getting more fearful the more they start going into higher levels of consciousness due to this worship gene. That's not the only effects of it, but that's what I see it being as a block inside a person's energy field. And another part of how this worship gene that was installed into our biology does is that one of its main features is it makes us always look to something to worship that's outside of ourselves, something to hold on to and give all of our power to. So that's what's known about this gene. But what's also a more esoteric thing that's less known about this gene is it actually makes us want to be food. That's what this alteration has done to our body, mind, spirit, so that we can't hold our own inner authority or our own spiritual sovereignty. It literally makes us want to be food. Through worship, it makes us think the opposite of what is true higher consciousness. It makes us think that it is wrong and bad and we should be in fear when we are not some form of food. Now, if you want to know why I keep saying food, you can watch my video, What is Loosh? Or Loosh Explained, where I talk about what exactly esoteric food is, which is this concept that is widely known as Loosh. So this worship gene makes us not just not be able to access our sovereignty and higher states of consciousness and our, inner authority, but makes us want to always give our power away, give our life force away, think that that is good and right. It even puts us into a euphoric state as we're being fed off of. It's completely counterintuitive to our higher self, to our true self. It is counterintuitive, which is why it needed to be installed. It needed to have a wiring to it, an organic circuitry to it, so that when we're at that level of being tampered with, that we actually think it's bad and wrong to break out of our own programming. So the first time I shared that video about there being a worship gene, it actually disappeared. I'm gonna try to find another one, and if I can, it will be linked down below. If it's not linked down below, that means I wasn't able to find one. Sometimes when knowledge has been hidden or kept secret from us, we can think that all of that was accurate and correct, when in fact, a lot of the times that people are learning occult sciences or occult knowledge, they're learning it from beings who still would benefit from us being in a lower level of consciousness and being in a tampered state where we only believe what's being told to us, and because it's being told to us by advanced groups or by advanced orders, that then we don't question its validity. And that's because we haven't reached our own inner gnosis. Who wouldn't accidentally think that because knowledge has been kept secret, that means that it's automatically true? It's very fair to think that. But when you come into a certain level of spiritual sovereignty, what you will be able to do is have the discernment to be able to understand that hidden occult knowledge is highly valuable, very precious for our own growth, and will activate higher levels of our frequency, while at the same time knowing that not all of it is accurate, and that there might be pieces and choice points within that knowledge that were actually infused into the whole truth in order to still control us, just at a much more subtle of a manipulative way. And so what we see is that a lot of the times that we have these orders that are now disseminating information into this age, what we'll see is that even those strands, no matter how well intended and how well meaning they are, will still have had a source where it came from, where it was benefiting certain beings who established that order or who interfered and started inserting their narrative into that order. So, was the human species altered and tampered with? Yes. But does that mean that whoever altered and tampered with us is our creator, and therefore we should either be in fear of them or that we should await their return so we can worship them and they can save us from ourselves? No. All of these are a sign of us still being within a certain bandwidth of our own limiting programming and our own unactivated DNA. So how you can support clearing these programs is through giving yourself gentle self-love and reassurance as you encounter any fear that comes up, while your consciousness is moving beyond the threshold of these programs. If your consciousness does not have self-love and support to break out of these limiting beliefs, then it can experience fear, or it could think that it is doing something wrong. This will manifest as starting to pay attention to a lot of distractions and to older ways of being that it has already outgrown. So the more love and inner presence you can give your consciousness through this process, then it will feel safe enough to continue receiving the upgrades that it will naturally receive simply by expanding. I hope this has helped your revelations. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.